A bipartisan plan to tackle the juvenile crime crisis passes in the House of Delegates, but not without some heated debate.
There is no amendment to this bill that would satisfy that for me.
This time, we need to take it seriously.
The major sticking points lawmakers are still butting heads over. The debate comes as 2 teenagers are arrested in connection with an armed carjacking, where they were found and why that location is raising red flags.
They're going to have to raise taxes, or they're going to have to cut services in other areas.
Many long-term projects in Baltimore City are getting short-term funding. How that could impact your wallet as we investigate how the city is spending its ARPA dollars. A community on edge tonight as it sees a rise in robberies.
And I see him walk past, and you can see him in the pants. You can see the shape of the gun in the pockets.
Why some say they're not feeling safe in their own homes. And we're tracking our next batch of showers, how that will impact your weekend hour by hour.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
There is no amendment to this bill that would satisfy that for me.
This time, we need to take it seriously. We need to make sure and hold accountable our law enforcement officers and make sure that they do what they are supposed to do righteously.
That is the passionate debate on the House floor today as delegates voted to pass the juvenile crime bill with overwhelming support.
It comes as crimes involving young people continue to skyrocket across Baltimore. The latest involving 2 teens arrested in an alleged armed carjacking that crossed jurisdictions. Residents telling Fox 45 that incidents like these show harsher punishments are needed.
1 year in juvenile, 1 year at least.
Good evening, I'm Maxine Stryker.
And I'm Kai Jackson. The juvenile crime bill has been one of the most talked about bills this session, and now its future lies with the Senate.
But some lawmakers say certain parts of this bill could pose problems. We have team coverage tonight, starting with Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost. She's taking a closer look at the bill's sticking points and where leadership stands on the House and Senate versions.
What to do with kids who are between the ages of 10 and 12 who steal a car is really the crux of this debate for lawmakers. Should they be sent to the court system or a diversionary program instead? The House of Delegates
is now in session,
gearing up for another debate about juvenile crime.
House Bill 14, juvenile law reform.
And lawmakers not holding back their opinions.
Even my most fiscally conservative colleagues will spend millions and millions and millions to the tune of $10 million to lock up little black boys. Yeah, I said it.
This bill is a pretty fair attempt to do both. It's not perfect for me. It's not perfect for a lot of others here.
All of our kids are going to be impacted by this, but especially Black and Latino kids. I cannot in good conscience support this.
The House version of this legislation calls for the creation of a commission to gather more data about juvenile crime.
To my last breath, I will make sure that that commission does what it's supposed to do.
It also extends probation, involves states' attorneys earlier in the charging process, and most debated, expanding the jurisdiction of the Department of Juvenile Services to kids who commit certain crimes between 10 and 12 years old. Except for this version, it does not include kids who steal cars for the first time and have a gun.
There would be the opportunity for the child to go through a diversion program. If they came back with another charge for car theft, then they would be subject to juvenile jurisdiction.
Those diversionary programs are not in place everywhere yet, raising concerns about the reality of implementation.
Does the bill address any funding for diversion programs?
So we don't usually deal with funding, but that is an issue that certainly is part of the budgetary process.
Ultimately, the plan getting bipartisan support.
I'd rather have a piece of pie than no pie at all. This doesn't go all the way, but it's a great start.
Passing the House on a 126-6 vote.
House Bill 814 happens to receive the constitutional majority is declared passed.
Arguably now, the real debate begins. In the Senate, lawmakers are requiring kids 10 to 12 who steal a car go through the child in need of supervision or SINS petition process, instead of participating in a program like the delegates are calling for.
As I've said very many times.
Friday, we pressed Senate leaders on if their version has enough teeth teeth to implement change. Do you have concerns that the Sins petition process might not work for these kids the first time, and what happens if it does happen again?
This does not allow for an informal adjudication, which means that you are going to go to a court for this Sins process, and it's going to be an adversarial process. The only difference is that you can't be on supervised detention. You can't go to a detention facility. You can be ordered to a group home. You can be ordered to intense services and treatment.
How are you convinced that the services that will be provided to these young car thieves will actually be followed?
It is a court order, and you are subject to court jurisdiction and a contempt of court order. And if you follow that along.
Own. They're intensely personal. They are the mechanism by which many of us get to work and provide for our families. It remains to be seen as to what the bill will end up. And we hope that the victims will be in the forefront of people's minds when they're crafting solutions to these problems.
That brings us to our question of the day. Will the juvenile crime bills make a difference in the crime crisis? So far, 99% of voters say no. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
Tonight, 2 teenagers are in custody in connection with an alleged armed carjacking. The crime crossed jurisdictions. Fox 45's Keith Daniels joins us live right now with a closer look at that crime and the growing frustration over car crimes across our area. And Keith, you just heard Howard County State's Attorney Rich Gibson talking about the impact of car crimes.
It's a frustrating matter for some people, Kai. Now, according to Baltimore police data, there have been 66 carjackings so far this year. Last year, 580 by the end of last year, and police say most of the offenders are young offenders, juveniles, and tonight, that's troubling for some residents. On the streets of Baltimore City, residents raising their voices this week, some of them frustrated over the juvenile crime crisis, notably car thefts with child offenders, and the punishment they believe the young lawbreakers should face, even with the first offense.
1 year in juvenile. 1 year at least. Kid criminals become adult criminals, and if he's getting away with it, then you're teaching him to be a criminal.
There you go.
You know?
I know that they have been influenced by adults, and that's why they're doing some of the things that they're doing.
Tonight, word of an arrest. 2 juveniles caught in connection with an armed carjacking in Northeast Baltimore. The suspects, 15 and 16 years old. Police said it happened Thursday afternoon just before 5 o'clock. Investigators say a man had dropped off a friend at a house on East Northern Parkway, was sitting in his car when juvenile males confronted him, carjacked him at gunpoint, and fled the scene. Later that day, Baltimore County Police responded to a call for a group of juvenile males bailing out of a vehicle. Officers canvassed the area, located and arrested the 15 and 16-year-old boys, identified them as suspects in the armed carjacking that happened on Northern Parkway. Police found the suspects on Westwood Avenue near Charles Avenue. Coincidentally, so close.
He went like this with the gun, and he went boom and hit me with it.
About a 20-minute walk from Donna Tallent's Baltimore County home, where the 72-year-old woman was beaten and carjacked in her backyard in November. The suspects in that case, also 2 boys, 15 and 16 years old.
The one said, give me your keys, and I have the keys in my hand like this, hit me on the head where I have this, I still have a knot, hit me on the head, I went down.
Those suspects caught. Their cases moving through the court system in Baltimore County, as 2 other teens now wait for their day in court in the city. Well, those are young carjacking suspects. Now, regarding the car theft issue, police say, namely Kia and Hyundai owners, police say you can pick up your free wheel lock tomorrow at Patterson High. That's tomorrow at Patterson High, 10 a.m. to noon. You must be a Baltimore resident and have proper ID. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
All right, Keith, thank you. Taking a quick live look at Baltimore and Towson, it looks like some rain is starting to come down. Chief Meteorologist Gerard Bailey has a look at just how long it's going to stick around.
It's going to be an all-night event for us, Maxine. So going into your Saturday, still going to be pretty messy, pretty big system moving into the area right now. And we're going to continue to watch as the rain fills in on the radar. So the next 12 hours, you can expect more of this. Hey, it's good sleeping weather. I'm happy to have it while I'm in bed. It's, at least you can tell it's going to be lingering all night long until the early morning hours on your Saturday. We're going to talk about how much more of your weekend we're going to have to deal with this, because I think there will be some good news in there. We'll go over that coming up in just a bit.
All right, Gerard, thank you. We look forward to hearing that good news. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock, one Baltimore City man says he moved to Baltimore from England and is considering moving back across the pond. Why, he says he's afraid to walk around in his own neighborhood. We're getting a look at the transcripts for the closed-door testimony of James and Hunter Biden, what that testimony reveals about the president and his involvement in Chinese business dealings. Fox 45 News finds several of Baltimore's long-term projects are coming from short-term funding. What happens when that money runs out and the impact that could have on taxpayers' wallets. His wallet in it too.
Well, Mayor Scott's use of one-time federal COVID funding is once again coming under fire this week.
The mayor recently received stark criticism from two mayoral challengers who argue the mayor is using the money to invest in his own campaign and not the city.
The fire department not getting zero amount, which is a 24/7-day-a-week operation, could have benefited.
Completely frittered away to repay donors and developers and help improve your re-election chances.
Tonight, more questions being raised over some of the long-term programs receiving this short-term funding.
Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor has new information about how your tax dollars are being spent.
Yeah, many of the mayor's ARPA investments will require continued funding, which is why tonight a taxpayer advocate is questioning how the city will continue to afford these programs once that money runs out. balancing Baltimore's 2024 budget, a battle for city leaders, mainly due to new Kerwin obligations.
It was a gut punch.
The landmark legislation pumping record funding into public education, pushing the city's budget into a multi-million-dollar deficit. To make do, money was shuffled, cuts were made, and now
We know that everybody's going to have to be tightening their belts around here.
little room is left for strengthening fundamental city departments, including police, fire, and public works.
Looking for large increases in any agency is not something that you should be looking for.
However, a saving grace amidst a struggling economy, $641 million in ARPA funding, a one-time gift from the federal government to offset financial hardships brought on by the pandemic. The only caveat, all the money must be spent by 2026. And yet, many of the initiatives Mayor Brandon Scott has chosen to invest in, long-term programs that can't be sustained on short-term funding. Among the mayor's ARPA expenditures coming under fire, nearly $15 million for Clean Corps, a program giving nonprofits funding to help pick up trash in the city.
As soon as that program ends, those communities are going to be right back to where they started from because they're not addressing the root causes.
Another $15 million purchasing 2 hotels to house more than 100 city residents experiencing homelessness. The project, uncharted territory for the city, costing taxpayers an additional $3 million for an outside management group to oversee 9 months of maintenance and operations.
So these costs are going to continue 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
And among the largest ARPA investments, $45 million for Monzi, the agency in charge of the mayor's violence intervention programs. Of that funding, $6 million set aside to expand staffing.
They are hiring a lot of staff, and that's going to be a fiscal liability for the city way after 2026, and the ARPA money runs out. Where is the city going to come up with funds, whether it's Monzi or any other program?
Taxpayer advocate David Williams warning the long-term toll investing in these long-term initiatives will have on residents.
Are they going to have to raise taxes? Are they going to have to cut services in other areas?
The answer, unclear.
The city missed the point with this funding. It should have been one-time expenditures.
As the city continues to spend funds today, they won't have in the future. I reached out to the mayor about those concerns today. In response, his office sent me a statement reading, quote, raising taxes is not an option currently being considered to support these projects. Long-term viability has been at the forefront of all decisions regarding ARPA funding, and attempts to indicate otherwise are unfortunately ill-informed. Reporting in the newsroom, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Week 1 is wrapped up in the trial of the man accused of murdering a Baltimore police officer. Coming up, a closer look at the key testimony and evidence presented in court.
I'm Atrell Nashar in Washington, where the Biden administration has just launched an investigation into smart cars and national security. Coming up, what the White House tells us about why China is at the center of it.
Sounding like an Annie Lennox song on repeat. Here comes the rain again. I know, we were talking about it, and it always seems to hit right at the beginning of the weekend. Well, we've got it, rainy start, but we also have some improvements to come to your Sunday, as well as some mild temperatures. We're going to talk you through all that coming up.
Now you can watch Fox 45 News for free anytime on Amazon Fire TV or Samsung TV Plus.
This week, President Biden instructed the Commerce Department to start investigating smart cars and car parts coming from countries of concern, namely China.
National correspondent Atra El-Nashar spoke to the White House about why they're worried about American drivers being used to undermine U.S. national security.
Cars are now essentially smartphones on wheels. At least that's how the White House puts it as the Biden administration tries to get ahead of how smart cars could pose a threat to national security.
Some countries who are not necessarily our allies, like the People's Republic of China, are getting really good at making these cars.
Cars that know a driver's location, patterns, connects to their Bluetooth, can even read text messages, and sometimes collect biometric information. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo says cars that have been made in other countries that are currently on American roads are not using Chinese technology. But if or when they are, could be sending data back to Beijing every minute of every day.
Not to mention the fact that your car can't run if the software is disabled. So imagine a world where with the flip of a switch, all of those cars could be disabled.
China is responding. Its foreign ministry spokesperson says they urge the U.S. to stop overstretching the concept of national security, stop its discriminatory suppression against Chinese companies, and uphold an open, fair, and non-discriminatory business environment. U.S. concerns about smart cars similar to concerns about TikTok and its data collection potentially being used by China.
Data is the coin of the realm. Those who have the best information have the power.
Power to conduct espionage, steal intellectual property, influence elections. China already has restrictions on American car companies, banning them from testing electric and self-driving cars on Chinese roads. The White House tells us the Commerce Department's investigation won't be focused on particular companies, just those in, as they put it, countries of concern.
They're asking a lot of questions about, the technology inside the vehicle, what kind of data is collected, who gets access to that data, how safe is that data stored.
Depending on what they discover, it could lead to a federal ban on Chinese auto software. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
That brings us to our national question of the day. Do you believe that Chinese technology is a threat to our national security? So far, 99% of those who voted say yes. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote and click on the Pulse tab.
As city officials continue to tout a decline in violent crime, quality of life crimes are on the rise. After the break, we'll show you the areas seeing the highest spikes.
I'm Kayla Gaskins in Washington, where we're seeing the transcripts from the closed-door testimony from Hunter Biden and James Biden regarding the impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden. The big takeaways straight ahead.
We're following three big stories at 10:30 tonight. The transcripts from President Biden's brother and son's closed-door testimonies are now available to the public. The biggest takeaways and what could come next in the House's impeachment inquiry into the president.
Week one has wrapped up in the trial of the man accused of murdering a Baltimore police officer and civilian. We'll be taking a closer look at the key testimony and evidence presented to the jury so far.
As city leaders continue to tout a decline in violent crime, residents tell Fox 45 they're still on edge.
I'd stay out later. I used to go and watch the music and listen to it. But now I walk the dog and I'm home by 5 o'clock.
That's where we begin. Despite a decline in homicides and non-fatal shootings, those quality of life crimes continue to impact every corner of the city.
And that includes robberies, which are already up from where they were last year. Fox 45's Vincent Hill joins us live now with a closer look at the numbers. Vincent?
Well, Maxine and Kai, 297, that's the number of people so far robbed this year, not including carjackings. And depending on where you live, you could become a target.
In central Baltimore, near Fells Point.
Since 1984, I came over from Liverpool.
Gary Cowan left one of the most violent cities in England and moved to Baltimore.
It was nice and calm.
But the once calm Baltimore he remembers now sounds like this.
Robbery, 3 suspects, 1 black female with a taser and 2 black males. The female was just robbed across the street.
The sound of robbery calls filling the dispatch center.
An area that we're seeing an increase are the street robberies.
That was Commissioner Richard Worley this past October.
They're up about 4%.
According to the latest BPD data, robberies are now up 23% citywide from this time last year. The Central District saw a 17% increase.
And I see him walk past, and you can see him in the pants. You can see the shape of the gun in the pockets.
During the same time, the Southeast District saw a 76% increase, and Northeast, 65%.
It's too dangerous, you know. I'm thinking about going back to Liverpool.
This is why people leave.
Mayoral candidate Sheila Dixon.
I don't want to have to feel nervous and have to look around. I shouldn't have to coming into my neighborhood.
Says she understands the fears residents are feeling.
I don't want people to go through that. That's just a horrible feeling, and it's a very uncomfortable feeling.
Meanwhile, despite an overall rise citywide, the Southwest, Eastern, and Northwest districts report a 28-day decrease.
Now, those 3 districts that I did mention saw a 27, 41, and 36% decrease, respectively. Meanwhile, arrests for robberies this year are up 60%. For now, we're live at BPD headquarters. Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
Vincent, thank you. One possible solution to reducing quality of life crimes like robberies was launched by City State's Attorney Ivan Bates last year. Bates created what's known as the Citation docket. We've reported a lot on it to tackle low-level crimes that the Mosby administration didn't prosecute. However, in the last month, its effectiveness has come into question. The probe started at the end of February at a city oversight hearing, and that's when we learned BPD had only issued 37 citations that made it to court. Nearly half were rejected because of mistakes. Top brass at BPD, some of it came down to incorrect wording, according to them.
Why is the volume of citations issued so low?
It's still a process for us, right, to issue a citation. Even if we see that individual doing something, we still have other policies that doesn't say as soon as we engage, we're automatically issuing a citation.
Well, the state's attorney's office says they trained the Maryland Comptroller and Field Enforcement Bureau, which had 83 citations make it to court, more than double the amount from BPD. They also trained the MTA, which had 64 sent to court. The state's attorney's office says they offered to train city police, but initially police didn't accept the offer. That's changed. Now BPD says officers will undergo that training.
It's been challenging. It's been challenging, but we have each other. We are a praying family.
Family of Baltimore police officer Kiana Hawley calling for justice as week one of the trial for the ambush murder of Officer Hawley and civilian Justin Johnson has wrapped up.
Elliot Knox is charged with both murders along with his co-defendant Trayvon Shaw, who has yet to have his day in court.
Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell has been in court each day of this trial and has the key testimony and evidence presented to the jury so far.
34-year-old Elliot Knox standing trial for the murders of Baltimore police officer Kiana Hawley and civilian Justin Johnson.
We are finally able to get justice.
Officer Hawley's family, including one of her 4 children, present in the courtroom. Back on December 16, 2021, Officer Hawley was murdered in an ambush attack as she sat in her patrol car in South Baltimore. 90 minutes later, Justin Johnson was also gunned down in his car in Southwest Baltimore. Video surveillance of Knox's car leading them to Knox, who prior to the trial in court documents admitted to being present for both murders and to hiding the murder weapons, but naming his co-defendant Trayvon Shaw as the shooter. In opening statements, Assistant State's Attorney Kurt Bjorklund telling the jury Knox's attempts to minimize his role don't matter according to the law. Knox's attorney, Natalie Finnegar, telling the jury what my client admitted to was accessory after the fact to hiding the weapons. He did not murder Mr. Johnson. He did not murder Officer Hawley. The state then moving to witness testimony. Over the next 3 days, Bjorklund calling at least 16 witnesses to the stand. The majority BPD officers, including those who responded to either homicide, took part in the arrest or questioning of Knox or executed search warrants. Crime scene techs who processed either murder scene and collected evidence, the medical examiner who supervised both autopsies, forensic scientist, and a DNA analyst. With the testimony, the state presenting dozens of pieces of evidence. During day 1 of the trial, the most emotional evidence presented came from an officer's body-worn camera. In it, the officer was heard saying, "Keep fighting. Come on, Holly. Come on, girl. Squeeze my hand. That's it," as he attempted to save her life. Holly's family having to walk out of the courtroom. Key evidence presented during day 2 of the trial, Elliot Knox's interview with police, where Knox admits to being there, to hiding the weapons, but names Shaw as the shooter. Police questioning Shaw's motive, asking, why? Why her? Knox, he never told me. Did he deal with her? Knox, I don't know. I didn't even know it was a lady until today. As for Johnson, Knox telling police Shaw said Johnson owed him money. In earlier testimony, Johnson's girlfriend telling the jury Shaw went to their home after Johnson's murder. In day 3 of the trial, the state focused on forensic evidence, including ballistics and DNA. A DNA analyst took the stand, testifying Shaw and Knox's DNA was found on one of the weapons. Knox's attorney cross-examining this testimony the most, saying results don't indicate direct or indirect transfer. The DNA analyst confirming. Knox quiet in the courtroom. Throughout week 1, showing emotion on 2 occasions as his interrogation video played for the jury as his murder trial continues. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
The state will continue to call witnesses and present evidence on Monday. Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell will be in court. Now, we've been following this trial every step of the way. For our full coverage from inside court, head to our website, foxbaltimore.com.
2 of President Donald Trump's criminal cases faced pivotal hearings today. In Georgia, a judge heard final arguments on whether Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis should be removed from the Georgia election subversion case. Trump's lawyers and other defendants argue that Willis and a special prosecutor had a romantic relationship and both should be removed from the case for conflict of interest. The judge declined to make a ruling today, saying a decision would come within the next 2 weeks. And in Florida, a federal judge did not issue any rulings in a hearing regarding the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. The judge also did not set a trial date. The trial is currently set for May, but there are differing opinions on when it will actually start. The special counsel's team is requesting a July 8th start date, while Trump is proposing an August 12th date.
The transcripts from the president's brother, James Biden, closed-door testimony have now been released. It comes just 1 day after the release of Hunter Biden's transcripts. Both depositions are part of the House's impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has the story.
James Biden, Joe Biden's brother, admitted to Congress he used funds from a firm with ties to the Chinese government to write a $40,000 check to repay a loan to Joe Biden back in 2017. Transcripts show his testimony also contradicts other witnesses, as he insisted Joe Biden never met with Chinese energy company officials. Meanwhile, Hunter Biden admitted he sometimes put his dad on speakerphone while at business meetings, and that his dad occasionally attended lunches he had with business associates. The first son, however, adamantly maintains that Joe Biden had no involvement or financial gain from any of these deals.
And I guess that we're just to believe that Joe Biden goes to all of these meetings for the food?
The question of Joe Biden's involvement in his family members' businesses is at the heart of this impeachment inquiry. Did his family sell influence and access to one of the most powerful American politicians to foreigners? Democrats who reviewed the transcript say Republicans still have no evidence.
They've overreached here. They have clearly overreached, and they have not corrected course.
Some Republicans, though, disagree, taking issue with Hunter's excuses for some of the evidence against him, like text messages he sent to a Chinese businessman demanding money, telling the businessman, "I'm sitting here with my father." When asked about this message, Hunter said he didn't remember sending it, that he was drunk and probably high, and more embarrassed of this text than any other he'd ever sent.
He has amnesia, he's drunk, he's high, and apparently he just can't go anywhere without daddy, but that's normal for a 40-something-year-old grown man. He's trying to play us for fools.
Following Wednesday's testimony, Hunter Biden's lawyer slamming the GOP's approach to the hearing.
It seems to me that the Republican members wanted to spend more time talking about my client's addiction than they could ask any question that had anything to do with what they call their impeachment inquiry.
House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer says the next steps for the impeachment inquiry are public hearings. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
CTE cases are common among football players, but could others be at risk? After the break, Spotlight on America investigates the troubling link between domestic violence victims and the deadly brain disease.
All right, we've been tracking this. It's the rain, and it's back, and it's going to be falling all night long and also beginning into your weekend. But we have some good news. It's not going to last all weekend long. We're going to tell you when we're going to have some dry time to come in just a bit.